Hey y'all, I'm Rachel White, and I'm here with my friends Jeanette Best,
Hi.
Danielle Bahr,
Hey.
and Lindsay Bowdoin.
Hello.
And we're here to educate you on Spirometra Mansonoides. This is particularly important to us because we're all pet owners and we're kind of obsessed. You'll see our animals throughout this presentation. In this picture, on the right is Danielle's dog Tucker, and on the left is her sister's dog Padfoot. So you're probably wondering what Spirometra Mansonoides is. Well, it's a parasite that's transmitted by aquatic animals, reptiles, and animals that live near the water. It's especially prevalent here in Florida since we're absolutely overflowing with water. So now that you know a little bit about who transmits it, let's talk about who can get it. It's transmitted to wild animals such as raccoons and bobcats, domestic animals such as dogs and cats, and human beings when they consume the infective larval stage of Spirometra Mansonoides, which lives inside of aquatic animals, reptiles, and other species. And Jeanette is going to teach you about their long, complicated life cycle. Danielle is going to tell you about how it affects your pets, and Lindsay is going to tell you about how it affects you. Make sure that you pay close attention because there could be a pop quiz at the end. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Thanks, Rachel, for that lovely introduction. Yes, the life cycle is quite complex with two intermediate hosts. Intermediate hosts are organisms that support or house the immature or non-reproductive forms of a parasite. This basically means where the parasite grows up. Definitive hosts are organisms that support or house the adult or sexually reproductive form of the parasite. Adult worms are pinkish in color, and their gravid proglottids, or sections, have a tightly coiled uterus filled with brown eggs. A fun fact, this tapeworm's name actually comes from its spiral-shaped uterus. Spiro meaning spiral, and metra meaning uterus. When adult tapeworms are attached to the host's intestines, their mature proglottids or sections separate along their longitudinal axis. This appears to make them look unzipped, and why they are commonly known as zipper tapeworms. This releases their eggs that will then travel through the intestines and be passed in the feces. Once the eggs are in the environment, it becomes the first developmental stage. They hatch with exposure to direct sunlight and water, and then the ciliated coracidium emerges from the egg. This stage swims freely in the water until it is eaten by the first intermediate host. The second developmental stage takes place in the first intermediate host, because once the coracidium has been eaten by a copepod, or a small crustacean, which you can see in the picture there, it develops into a procercoid, kind of like a cyst. The picture on the right with the arrow is pointing to a procercoid in a copepod. And this process takes about 2 to 3 weeks from the time of ingestion. The procercoid stays in the first intermediate host until that host has been eaten by a second intermediate host. The third developmental stage of this worm takes place in the second intermediate host. The infected copepod is eaten by a fish, amphibian, reptile, bird, or rodent. The procercoid then migrates into the muscles or connective tissue of the new host and develops into a plerocercoid, or also known as a sparganum. These white ribbon-like spargana are found primarily in subcutaneous sites, and this stage is the infective stage of the parasite. So your pets can become infected by chasing and ingesting frogs, water snakes, fish, birds, or rodents that contain the infective plerocercoids. Now, the adult tapeworms come from the plerocercoids in the small intestine of the definitive host. The pre-patent period, which is what we like to call the time from infection to detection. So when your pet eats the parasite and the time that they shed the eggs and the feces, so we know the parasite is there, that can take anywhere from 10 to 30 days. So what this means is that the adult tapeworms will begin to shed eggs that will start this complicated life cycle all over again as quickly as 10 days from the time your dog or cat has ingested the infected animal that was serving as transportation for this sneaky parasite.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about how it affects your pets. So Spirometra Mansonoides can be found in multiple different... Oops, didn't change my slide. Okay, so it can be found in different species, like dogs, cats, raccoons, and bobcats. And then your pets can get them from a few different sources, which we call our vectors, which is an organism that transmits a disease from one animal to another. So, for example, this includes your freshwater fish, your snakes, your frogs, your rodents, and your birds. Some of the symptoms that go along with this are diarrhea, vomiting, enteritis, which, if you don't know what that is, that means inflammation in your intestines, and also a low-grade fever. If you have any of these symptoms with your animals, you should make an appointment with your local veterinarian or wherever you go right away. What your veterinarian is probably going to do is do a fecal flotation or a fecal sedimentation, and they're going to look under the microscope to check for the eggs. They can also find a few different types of parasites in there as well. And to treat this, you're going to treat with dewormers, which different vets have different kinds of dewormers, but a couple examples would be Esperantal and Praziquantel. And after they do that, you're going to want to get your animals on some type of monthly prevention, and this can come in a pill form or a topical form. And then you're going to want to keep your animals away from any contaminated water and raw or undercooked fish and meats.
Now we're going to talk about humans, or sparganosis. It's a human version of Spirometra Mansonoides. It is a parasitic infection caused by the larva of the genus Spirometra. It's a zoonotic infection, which means it's passed from animals to humans. Humans are accidental hosts. Humans accidentally get this infection from animals, such as frogs. How do you get it? Drinking contaminated water, or water that's contaminated with infected Spirometra larvae. But there's no way to tell if the water is contaminated, which makes it an easy way of getting it. Consuming raw meat. Eating raw food such as seafood or frogs. You can avoid getting it this way by cooking your meat thoroughly before eating it. Applying infected frog flesh to wounds. Mucous membranes of wounds give the larva an entrance to the body. In Thailand, people believe putting frog meat on open wounds is a way of healing. Where is it found? It's mainly found in the countries of China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, and Asia. It's rare to find in the United States, but it's possible with the rise of population movement, which means it could be brought to the United States by travelers from countries where it is common. Symptoms: painful nodules. The larvae migrate to a subcutaneous location under the skin, where they develop into a painful nodule. Itchiness and inflammation. These nodules become itchy and inflamed. Nodules can develop anywhere on the body. The larvae can migrate to different locations all over the body. Some of these locations include the tissue of the chest, abdominal wall, extremities, and eyes. Diagnosis: after surgical removal of the worms. Preoperative diagnosis is rare. Diagnosis results after worms have been found. It's typically diagnosed following surgical removal of the worms. Eosinophilia, which is high levels of a certain type of white blood cell that may indicate a parasitic infection. Biopsy with worms. Another way is to get a biopsy sample that has the worms already in it.
So y'all remember how I said there might be a pop quiz at the end? Here we go. What is another name for Spirometra Mansonoides? Is it A, fake tapeworm, B, roundworm, C, zipper tapeworm, or D, Velcro tapeworm? If you said C, zipper tapeworm, you're correct. Good job.
How many intermediate hosts are in their life cycle? Is it A, 5, B3, C1, or D2? That's right, it's 2 intermediate hosts. What is the shortest amount of time from infection that adult worms pass eggs? Is it A, 15 days, B, 10 days, C, 5 days, or D, 20 days? Yep, 10 days is the shortest amount of time.
All right, next question. What is a zoonotic disease? Is it A, a disease that can be transmitted between humans and animals, B, a disease that can be transmitted between animals in confinement, C, disease that only affects animals, or is it D, a disease that only affects humans? It's a disease that can be transmitted between humans and animals. Now, define enteritis. Is it A, an inflammation of the stomach, B, diarrhea, C, an inflammation of the intestines, or D, vomiting? And it's C, inflammation in the intestines.
What is the name of the parasitic infection found in humans? Is it A, spironosis, B, sparganosis, C, leptospirosis, or D, metatrosis? B, sparganosis.
Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We really hope that you learned something. Bye.
Bye.